Hi there, my name is Emma, and in today's video I'm going to teach you something very important for if you're taking any type of test that has a writing component. So if you are taking the IELTS, the TOEFL, the CELPIP, even just a university test, it can be any type of test, but if you're asked to write something like an essay or a paragraph, this video is for you, okay? So I'm going to teach you a very important skill that will help improve your marks when it comes to writing on tests. So let's get started. So I have here an essay question. This question is actually, I've seen it on the IELTS. You have similar types of questions on the TOEFL, sometimes in university. The question is this: education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. Do you agree or disagree? Or maybe to what extent do you agree or disagree? So this is an example of a question you might be asked. Now, a problem a lot of students have is in their answer to this question. They see this and they think, okay, education is the most important factor in the development of a country. Yes, I agree. So then or I disagree, and they start writing. And what do they write? Usually the very first thing students will write is this: I agree that education is the single most important factor in the development of a country because. So what is the problem with this? Is there any problem to start off your essay with something like this, or to start off your answer? There's a big problem. So I want you to take a moment and think, what could be the problem with starting your essay off with this sentence? Okay, well, if you noticed, you have here the word education. Education is the single most important factor. If you notice, these are the same. They're the exact same, except for I agree that and because. The student here has used the exact same wording that is in the question. So if you do this on the IELTS, and many students do this, same with on the TOEFL, you actually will lose marks. And same with in university, because you're not showing your abilities, you're just copying what somebody else has said or what the essay question is. So in this video, I'm going to show you, first off, I'm going to tell you don't do this, don't copy, and I'm going to teach you ways in order to improve yourself and your answer by changing this wording. How can you change your introduction so it's different than what the question is? Okay, so let's look at how to make these changes. Okay, so what we are going to do in order to change the question into a proper answer that doesn't just copy the question is we are going to paraphrase. So the word here is paraphrase. This might be a new word for you. What does it mean to paraphrase something? Well, when we paraphrase, it means we take a sentence that, we take somebody else's sentence and we change it into our own words, okay? So we change the words of a sentence. We also change maybe the sentence structure, but we keep all the same meaning, okay? So the meaning from the sentence you copy, it stays the same meaning, but different words and different sentence structure, okay? So it's in your words, but this other person's meaning. So we are going to paraphrase this example of a question into our own words. And so first we're going to look at how to do that using vocabulary and synonyms. So we have here the same question. Education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. How can we put this into new words or our own words that keep the same meaning? Well, we can use synonyms. So this might be a new word for you too, a synonym. Synonyms are words that have the same meaning but are different words. So for example, big and large, they have the same meaning, just like huge, enormous. These are synonyms of each other, same meaning, but they're different words. So you need to use different synonyms so you don't just copy these words. You use synonyms to have words that have the same meaning but are different words. So let's look at an example. Our first word here is education. What's another word we can use instead of education? Well, there's different words we can use. Maybe one could be schooling. Okay, so we could change this word to schooling. Schooling is the single most important factor in the development of a country. What's another word we can change? Well, maybe most important. Instead of using the word most important, maybe we could use most significant or most essential. Okay, so essential, significant. There are many words you can use, but the point here is find a word that has the same meaning but is a different word. Okay, here's another word, factor. Can you think of another word for factor? Well, sometimes factor, it can be an aspect or an element, okay? You can even say sometimes a significant role, okay, or a part. So there's different words we can use that have similar meanings. In terms of the word development, we can change the word development to advancement, progression, evolution, okay? And in terms of the word country, another word for country is nation, okay? So these are all synonyms, and this is what you want to do. When you look at the question, think about some new words you can use that have the same meaning. This is also important throughout your essay, because one problem a lot of students have is they keep using the same word again and again and again in every sentence. This does not help you with your marks. It's better to use different words that have the same meaning. At the same time, you have to be careful here, because some students, they find a new word, they think it's a great word, but there is a little bit of a difference in meaning. So you need to be really comfortable with the word you choose, and you need to know what it actually means so it doesn't sound strange. Okay, so if we wanted to change this now, instead of saying education is the single most important factor in the development of a country, our first step in our paraphrase could be changing these words to schooling is the single most significant element in the advancement of a nation. Okay, so that's just one example. So now let's look at another thing you can do in order to paraphrase the question on a test or exam. Okay, another way we can paraphrase is by changing the structure of the sentence. So for example, you might have a verb, and which is an action, and you might change that into its noun form. So for example, if your verb is developing, you might change that into development. You might change, similarly, a noun into a verb, okay? So for example, we just said development is the noun. It can turn into develop or developing. You can also change things into adjectives. So if, for example, you're talking about technology, which is a noun, you could change this into the adjective form, which is technological. So changing the form of the word can help you with paraphrasing. Also changing the placement of the words can help you out. So for example, in our original sentence, or the question was, education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. So I've now changed some of the wording as well as the order. Okay, so here education is at the beginning. In my sentence, the most essential element of a nation's development is education. I've changed the order of the sentence. So now education is at the end instead of at the beginning. I've also started out with the most essential as my beginning, whereas here it was in the middle. You'll also notice we have here in the development of a country, I've changed this to nation's development. I could also change this to country's development instead of the development of a country. So changing the order of the sentence and changing some of the structures can really help you in terms of paraphrasing. Now let's learn one other way in which we can improve our marks by paraphrasing. Okay, so the last tip I have about paraphrasing a question is using concessions. So what is a concession? Well, I want you to look at what the question actually says and my new answer to it. The question, again, same question as before. Education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. My answer, okay, so I've changed some words and I've also changed the structure a bit, but there's one other thing I've added. Although many would argue that the economy is the most important factor in nation building, I think education has a far greater impact. So what I've done here is I've added a concession. A concession is where you say what the opposite opinion is, and then you say what your opinion is. So you're giving two opinions. You're giving your opinion and also what other people might think. This is a great thing to do, especially in essays, and this is something you can do at the beginning of your answer. So we use here the keyword although, okay? And you'll notice that this has two clauses. I don't want to get too technical with grammar on you today, but what I mean is, if you see, we have the red part. Although many would argue that the economy is the most important factor in nation building. And then we have a second part. So we have two parts to this sentence. I think education has a far greater impact. So the first part of the sentence is in red, and it's the although part. And the second part of the sentence is in purple, okay? And that's, I think education has a far greater impact. And they're separated by a comma. So a concession has two parts to it. You say what the other people think first. In this case, although many meaning people, we could also say many people, although many would argue that the economy is the most important factor in nation building. Okay, so this is what some people would say. Now I'm going to say what I think. I think education has a far greater impact. So why is this a good idea? Well, one reason is because when you write a concession, when you're showing what the opposite opinion of yours is, you're showing that you've thought about the issue, okay? You're looking at both sides. You're not just looking at your opinion, you're looking at both sides, and then you're making a judgment. So this shows that you're thinking about the question and you're really giving it some thought. And by representing both sides, you're really showing critical thinking. So this is a very good idea to do. Okay, so the three things we've talked about today in terms of paraphrasing the question is changing the words using synonyms. We've talked about changing the sentence structure. And we've also talked about adding the other perspective using concessions. Okay, so these are three things you can do in order to change the question so you're not just copying what is on your test paper. Again, great thing to do if you're writing a high school essay, university essay, TOEFL, IELTS, CELPIP, all of these things, this skill will really come in handy for you. Now you might be wondering, okay, this is great, but I don't know any synonyms, or I don't know much about this. Well, what you can do is you can come check out our website at www.ingvid.com. There you can find a lot of other resources, including improving your vocabulary. We even have a video on how to make concessions. We have videos on sentence structure too. So there's a lot of videos you can check out and a lot of resources. You can also come visit our website where you will find a quiz. And by taking that quiz, you can actually practice your paraphrasing skills. So you can see, am I doing this right? Is this the right way to do this? And get more practice. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. And until next time, take care.